Hello, this is Pastor Terry Goodman, and I want to welcome you to the Wesleyan Connection. This podcast is primarily for the clergy and laity of the Holston Annual Conference. Join with me now as I take a look around the Connection and share some of the things happening in the churches of our annual conference. Hello, this is Pastor Goodman again, and I want to welcome you to this episode of the podcast, The Wesleyan Connection. I'm continuing with the conversation between our district superintendent, Jeff Wright, and a group of pastors that got together on Tuesday morning following our September ministers meeting. And this segment starts off with a question that we are posing to ourselves. Actually, we were supposed to ask the question at the ministers meeting in our small groups the night before. I, however, forgot that that's what I was supposed to do and talked about something else. But this is the question that we wanted to talk about, and the question was, what would it take to make me, as a minister, feel successful in my ministry? And so I invite you to listen in as we get around the table and talk about that question and branch off into some other things as well.
We had, the question was, what would it take to make you successful, right?
Right.
And so originally we got bogged down with just what quantifies success. And they really never did say what it was to make them successful, because they didn't know what success looked like, from a personal, church, district, and conference standpoint, and that was a real problem. But, we had one guy, I guess he needed to do this. He really dominated the whole time, but maybe it's the first time he's ever felt comfortable to where he could talk like that. I don't know. I'm considering that a positive thing. But, several years ago, many of y'all remember Roy Corbin. He did a study on the churches in just Lee County. And on any given Sunday in Lee County, there are about 3,000 people in church somewhere. But Lee County has a population of about 24,000. So that meant 21,000 people were not at home. I mean, we're not at church, but we're at home or somewhere else. And, you hear the churches say, well, where can we go get these people and everything? And I think part of what we consider success is from the kind of the tense of the moment there that they were talking about is, how do we go get all those people who are staying at home or whatever? And because that's a large amount of people that's at home on any given Sunday morning. And I think they were trying to say success would be, how can we really reach out to them without coming back on some of the old cliches? Well, there's no kids around, there's no youth around, the community has moved out, whatever, because it may have broadened a little bit, but it's still out there. There's a lot of people. There's very few places I know of where the community's completely moved out, and everything. But they can't look at success because they see such unsuccess, because there's so many people that just won't go to church, and they think the conference looks at it with numbers. Yeah. And I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying the conference, and they want to see success in actual real evangelism, and they don't even, I was at a loss too to really tell them how to go about doing that.
See, that, to me, the success and the mission is tied hand in hand, because it's our mission to reach them, not to get them in church, but to reach them with Christ. Whether they ever come to my congregation or not is just about meaningless to me.
But how do we? I think there's a lot of pastors doing that on their day-to-day, in their day-to-day living. They are meeting people at Walmart, other places, and they are talking to them about Christ. But that doesn't go on any conference, statistics at all. But they feel like that's, like you're saying, that is part of what they're supposed to do. But you can't quantify it. There's nothing we have to quantify it.
I'm not going to say pastors in general, but we're taught to, I guess, have an ulterior motive when we have certain things like fellowship meals or getting children in. If you get the children in, the adults will come. We have an ulterior motive because, like you said, we're told we need to do our numbers. But we need to quit that.
Absolutely.
Because Jesus is not part of a denomination. And what we're supposed to be out there is telling others about Christ, helping them disciple Christ, helping them to learn, because there's many people out there that's never been to church, but all they hear is the negatives of church, and they're afraid to come in because they're afraid, oh goodness, they're going to pull me in and make me part of this, and I'm not ready to do that. But we need to quit the ulterior motive and just get back to the basics of offering Christ to everybody. And if they want to accept it, fine. If they don't, if we have a fellowship meal, invite the community, but not under the auspice of trying to get them in to make them a member of the church.
To me, that's success.
Now, that's what I do.
What you said there, we saw that 2 weeks ago. At Pennington, of course, just like Lane, you have community meal. Mm-hmm. And we have a community meal on Thursday night. And some of the folks had talked about, well, we would love to see these Thursday night folks come to church on Sunday morning. But the thing is, for some of these folks, the hungry and the helpless and the hopeless, that's as they're classified sometimes, Thursday night, and that's what I've tried to instill in the minds of our folks, Thursday night for these folks that come, that is their church. And we did, of course, we do communion service first Sunday each month. And I did communion for them on that Thursday night, not knowing how it would be received, what would happen. But folks, it was touching because after our meal, and I did just a short devotion. In fact, I put the picture of the Lord's Supper behind me and downstairs and talked about it. And I asked them to look at the picture, wondering why Jesus, I don't know if you've ever noticed in that, but in that picture, Jesus has one hand like this and the other hand like this. And the thought that came to my mind that I shared with them is Jesus is inviting all and he is blessing all at the same time. And as those folks came forward, we had folks that the stench is horrendous, of course, and folks that are real fuzzy and dirty. But I want you to know, I never felt the presence of the Spirit of God and the power of Christ more than I did as these folks were coming forward with hand out for us to place the bread in their hand and receive the cup. And for them, that was worship. And they didn't have to be there on Sunday morning.
That's right.
And in fact, they probably were a lot more comfortable being there on Thursday night than they would be on Sunday morning. And some of our Sunday morning folks, let's be honest, would be more comfortable with them being there, unfortunately.
A whole lot of it.
But that was worship for them.
Well, I think
And I
that's
say praise God for that.
I think that's the beauty of having an open-ended question to start these conversations is, you know, we don't define success. What's successful to you? What is God calling you to that is successful?
Yes.
And it's different for, you know, maybe there is somebody in our district who says it's having 100,000 people in our congregation. I don't think there is. But that person can articulate that, and you can articulate that Thursday night is a success. And I think if we all start with that, we could go many different directions in each of the groups. But we learn from each other and build each other up, which is what the Church in Acts did. And that's the beauty of how we met, I think. I do like starting with a question. I think it would be helpful if Jeff or whoever's up front said, start with this question.
Okay.
Because it was kind of, you know, I'm not a good...
I can't make that long question.
I'm walking in and moderating, and, you know, as Lane and I were walking to our group, we're going, what was the question?
I didn't realize we were supposed to ask a question.
We never got to the question.
Well, the only thing I do remember in that meeting last time we had was that was a question.
Yeah,
There was
you
a
did
question.
well.
Yeah.
You did well.
This is Pastor Goodman. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Wesleyan Connection. Be sure to check back often for more podcasts.